think it's really challenging for techies to think that they're creative. Some, right, have creative outlets. They're musicians or some other kind of artist or something like that. But I think that actually most engineers I know are actually quite creative. They've just been told they aren't. So it would be really good if they would just accept the fact that they are creative. Then they can kind of dive into this super fun creative process.
Welcome to the Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life 20-minute podcast. I'm your host and story coach, Doug Stevenson. In this podcast series, I'm going to share with you practical storytelling hacks, techniques, and holistic approaches that will make your stories stick. Stories that sell you and your product or service. Now, if you feel that you learned something valuable today, something that you can use, please click on the follow or subscribe button. All right, well, here's a preview of what you'll learn in this episode. Number one, how to make complex ideas and processes simple and understandable with a story. Number two, why your brilliant PowerPoint slides and bullets are boring. And number three, the danger of getting bogged down in explaining how something works rather than why it's important. All right, let's get started with my interview with Jennifer Herron, a self-described nerd.
Okay, well, my name is Jennifer Herron. I am the CEO and founder of Action Engineering, which, Doug, I think you were the first people to call us actioneers. So, one of the things that we like to do in our company is turn talk into action. But our business is in the digital transformation space, but specifically focused on companies that manufacture products. And we're helping those companies move from using 2D paper-based documentation methods to using 3D documentation methods that can be interconnected with all their other systems and data. Super geek technical business. Yeah, if you want to know what the modeling kernels are for all the CAD systems, I could tell you. And then we'd have to talk about what a modeling kernel is and what the topology is versus, a BREP model. Yeah, pretty geeky, pretty nerdy. We have a hard time messaging the benefits of what this really cool technology is capable of because, we kind of see it all interconnected in our head and we know it and we can click like you wouldn't believe, but then be able to teach it and communicate it in a simple enough way that people see the benefits and want to spend the time and the money and the effort to get big return on investment. That's been our challenge. And that's why, that's why we came to you, Doug, to help us share those stories and figure out ways that we could communicate more eloquently and I'll just say more funly. Is funly a word? Can I say funly?
You can certainly say funly with my group of people. Funly is fine.
Yeah, because there's an aspect of playfulness that you know me that I like, and we like to keep that with our customers too because it makes it more fun. Because we call it model based. Everything we do is model based, like it's 3D, so it's model based definition, model based engineering, model based enterprise. But then eventually you end up with model-based depression because it's so hard and complex.
Because it is so dense, and there's so much how this works, how this works, and how we do this, and how this will happen, and how leads to data dump, which leads to boring, which leads to they're not getting it.
I just listened to somebody, Doug, on a meeting. And he started out real eloquent. And I was like, okay, I got the first couple of sentences. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Oh my God. 10 minutes has gone past and he's going, wah, 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 wah. I have no idea what he said. Just not a clue because I totally tuned out.
Even though he was speaking your language, he was another nerd. He was another geek.
Totally. But I just stopped listening because I was bored.
Well, it doesn't activate the brain. Story activates the brain.
Absolutely.
Data and PowerPoint slides and facts, they're all important, I'm not
Yep.
saying they're not important, and they're important, but they follow story. Context goes first, detail comes after. I've often said, if you can first engage them and get them interested in the
Yep.
why this is important and what this will do for your business before you get to how, if you do why and what, they will ask for the how. Well, now their brain is primed. It's like, don't walk out to me in a restaurant and start sticking food on the table when I haven't ordered.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of
analogy.
presentations are. It's like, I'm going to give you all of this stuff, but you haven't asked for it yet.
That's right.
Because you haven't explained to me why this is important. So story is all about why. So tell me about how the work that we did on story, not just for you individually, but for your team, has helped to perhaps shift things a little bit so that you use some stories in a more strategic way.
That's a great question. And I will say that as engineering nerds, we are afflicted by constantly starting with how instead of starting with why. But what we've asked ourselves every day since the workshop that we had together as a team is, what is the why? Why are we doing this? And what story are we going to tell? And I think that was a really big mindset shift for everyone, because we got to tell our own stories in our own way, and they were personal stories, but then connecting them with the business aspects of what we're trying to do and to sell. That has been definitely a constant conversation for us. We have not only do we have a services business, but we also have a training business where we're training and teaching people the how, but we always begin with the why statement or the benefit statement. At least we try real hard to share that why and benefit up front with as many stories as we can during the training. And so we have now a trainer who does all of our live training events that you did not meet, but he's constantly layering in his experiences, in his own engineering experiences during manufacturing and quality operations. He's constantly layering in that into all the math and the how-to that he's conveying every day. So it's definitely shifted. When we engage with clients, we're trying to tell stories every day. And then for me personally, every time I'm either working on a sales call or on, just sharing experiences and educating other people, it's all about, well, let me tell you the story about when we helped this client and they went from A to B and they saw Z metric. Right. And so just integrating that in your Aikido selling technique, we use that all the time too. Use that term constantly.
Well, yeah, that's it's one of my upcoming podcasts is
cool.
Or when you're listening to this interview, it might have already happened or it might be coming up, but Aikido selling, because what you're talking about, you're the CEO. You're the one who has to sell.
Yeah.
I mean, other people might sell as well, but you're the one that they call the organization and they get on the phone with you and you're sitting there knowing, I'm on the phone. I'm not in the room with this person. I'm on the phone and I've got to somehow connect with them emotionally and visually and paint a picture for them about, if we were to work together, this is what you would see and experience in a room. This is how this would work. So you're responsible for sales. Storytelling that sells, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Have you found one or two that you told it once and you thought, whoa, that was a good one. That worked. I think I'll use that again.
Yeah, definitely. And the story is generally around supply chain, surprisingly enough. So that's, completely relevant today in today's world. And it's typically about, you've got an engineering company and they hand off their design to somebody to build, just like an architect hands it off to a general contractor to get their building built. So the same kind of interaction and during that handoff, there are stories that we tell about how we've helped both sides of that coin, both the designer side and the builder side. And we're telling stories about how we did it, but we're also sharing the metrics and the feelings of the people involved in the process.
So there's data,
right?
There's monetary benefit, but there's human story. The human story is the person who would be responsible for the screw up.
Yeah.
Without you. Right. And that would be their job. You know, there's got to be pain in these stories. It's not just, well, this is a nice story and we do this. It's like, without us, this is what will happen.
And that's an excellent reminder for me, Doug, because that's a big deal actually, is I can map out on a calendar when the people that come to us will reach burnout, because we've done it so much and we've seen so many implementers in our space. I can tell you to the day almost when they're going to burn out. And I may not have met them ever before. and it, you know, that's the kind of stories that we say, we're going to help you avoid that burnout because we're going to bring things to you in a completely different way.
And so a story about a person,
yeah,
not groups of people. It's like a story about an individual who hit
yep.
burnout.
Yep.
Because they didn't have this in place. Right. And it's kind of, I often talk, it's like a before and an after story. Before action engineering,
yep.
Problems, burnout, cost overruns, da-da-da-da. With action engineering and after action engineering, less burnout, more profit, less screw ups, more smooth operations. It's like, so the story's got this flow from here's the problem to here's the solution, but we have to have the pain.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's not just generic pain. No, his name was George.
Right.
He was 48 years old.
Yep.
And he should have been able to work for another 10 years, but he was
right.
ready to quit. And it's that kind of thing.
Yeah. The specificity in the stories has been really powerful. And actually, what we've done is we've created, you remember Rhiannon probably, she has analyzed about 50 different personas in the manufacturing universe, from, you know, design engineer like me all the way through the guy on the shipping dock that is accepting, you know, the new product that comes in from the supplier. And it's a huge spectrum of people and personalities, and they all have stories. And she has created, you know, their age and how many kids they have and what songs are their favorite songs and, you know, what's their favorite dinner. And I mean, you know, so like we have these key, very specific stories that we can go into when we start teaching about, okay, here's Tyler, the engineer, and he's going to talk to Mike, the manufacturing engineer, who then is going to turn everything over to Mark, the machinist, who is going to actually produce this part. And let's talk about what the conflicts are in between all those interactions and pieces, because right now you're doing it with this silly 2D paper drawing, and we can connect all this data together.
There you go.
Impact your enterprise at a really profound level.
Well, it all comes down to human beings. Human beings have to execute everything. They have to communicate back and forth.
Right.
And you can, with stories, help people understand, oh, I didn't see that interaction before.
Right.
I didn't quite get that flow.
Right.
Now, here's the question that is hugely important, because you've got some of my signs on the wall.
Yep.
And they're like phrase that pays, you know, feel the emotion of the moment. That's a call to action. That's a thing you're supposed to do, is to feel. That's the verb. Are there phrase that pays kinds of things that you as an organization use in your marketing, in your sales? Do any of the guys in your organization that go out, do they use phrases like this? That's like, this is who we are. This is what you need to do.
Yeah, there's two. One of them is one that I've used for years, and that's evolve or dissolve.
Lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, there's actually several stories that go with that, but it's also really relevant to where we are in time and space today. Because if you ain't evolving right now, forget about it. You're not going to exist, right?
But I like the evolve and dissolve, the rhyme of that. It's not just
Yeah,
evolve and something else. It's evolve, dissolve. I'm sure you worked on that
yeah,
to get that combo, and it's 3 words. It's
yeah,
perfect. It's perfect.
yeah, yeah. So that's one of our main marketing messages. And then the other one is, and you probably remember working with Ryan on this, maybe, is you have to talk to Walter. Walter is our inspector, and he's, 68 years old, and he's almost, out the door. And he grew up with paper and red pens and checklists and a ruler and, and so and he's the guy that is going to stop your entire organization in its tracks from adopting digital technology, because he's the last in the chain, and he's going to be like, I don't open a computer. I don't know what a mouse is. I don't know how to click around on a trackpad. I'm not going to do this. I'm retiring next month. So talk to Walter, because if you don't talk to Walter, you are not understanding the human beings in the loop that have to do all this
The saboteur.
transformation. It's he becomes the saboteur, and you didn't even know he existed at the beginning because you were, well, frankly, too nerdy, and you didn't think people existed.
Well, it's a nice metaphor, because Walter is Joanne and Bob and Joaquin and
Yeah.
Sally, and it's like, it's not Walter. It's Walter is that icon.
Absolutely.
You got to talk to Walter. Who's the Walter in your organization?
Yep.
That's going to sabotage the whole thing. Who's going to gum it up, slow it down, mess it up, get it confused, cause angst and anxiety. And so those are two that you've got, and I'm glad that you've got those, because they're the thing that simplifies it all down to the simplest nugget: talk to Walter. And people walk out of the room, and the one thing they take out sometimes is, yeah, I need to talk to Walter. We have a Walter. And I didn't know that I needed to do that. And I don't want to talk to Walter, but I need to talk to Walter. And evolve or dissolve, it's like, it's got the positive and the negative all in 3 words.
Yeah. And it's like you always say, Doug, right? Your content is great. Like, the engineers are, the content is fine. It's just the delivery and the the delivery, the timing, the phrase that pays, pulling it all together. Like, that's the hard part to work. It's still hard to work. I mean, it's still work. So, but
well, it's a constant process. I mean, I don't all of a sudden wake up and have like perfect phrase that pays and perfect stories. I have to work on it.
Yeah, right.
It's like a Broadway musical didn't just happen.
No, in fact, I just saw Hamilton on Tuesday Night Live for the first time ever. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Right.
And I came out of there and I was like, that is 3 straight hours of the most amazing dialogue on the planet, telling an entire person's life story. How was that possible? And then I'm Googling 7 years. It took him 7 years to write that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about when your people are going out and presenting and telling these stories, who's in the room? Who's the audience?
Well, that's a good question. So if I look at the training aspect side, it's very engineer practitioner level, day-to-day kind of people down in the weeds. If we are selling, we're at more VP level, some C level sometimes. So those stories have to be even tighter, because there's not a lot of tolerance for bad stories. I think in the practitioner level, they're sort of there to have fun and and learn new things. So there's a little bit more flexibility with.
You got more time.
You got more time. Yeah, you got more time. But we still really try to make the stories tight in that aspect. But there's certainly more, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but more intensity, more pressure, more need to prepare for a C-level audience.
And be precise. Know what you're doing. Go in and do what you plan to do.
Absolutely.
Not just ad-libbing and seeing what happens and hoping you get lucky. It's like,
Yes.
if you nail it, you make a sale.
That's right.
And that sale is huge.
Right.
And it's not a one-time sale because it could lead to a referral. It could lead
Yep.
to years and years and years.
Yeah, or repeat business in different ways. Absolutely.
Right. Well, that's what I say to people. It's like, you are willing to spend 12 hours on a PowerPoint deck that nobody will love. Nobody will pay any attention to. It will drive people crazy. 12 hours to create a PowerPoint deck of 63 slides with 948 bullet points that nobody will pay any attention to, but you won't spend 3 hours on a 3-minute story.
Right.
What's going to pay the bills? It's the 3-minute story.
The 3-minute story. Yeah.
What else from the work that we did together, or what else along the way have you incorporated around storytelling, vignettes, metaphors, analogies, any of that kind of stuff that's come in along the way? Because you've got a whole team full of creative people.
Yeah. So I'll go back to that big concept, tell stories to teach concept. That's something that, it's a consistent struggle, because the concepts that we are teaching are, I was going to say complex, but they're also just difficult for humans to wrap their heads around, because it's a change. It's a story of change. We're constantly trying to look for the story about urgency. Why is it urgent for you to change all your documentation methods over to this 3D digital method that we'd want you to use? What is the urgency? So we've tried to layer in organizational change management with the stories so that we can get them to see and get motivated about the change. And everybody's sort of consistently thinking of what those stories are. What we've got up on the docket next is to start building out stories for each of those personas that I mentioned. So we've got Mike, the manufacturing engineer, and Mark, the machinist, and Fred's the assembly technician, and Walter is the inspector. And so, if we can build a story from each of those perspectives, and share, we've been to enough places and worked with enough companies. We just sort of, we tell the story like it is. We just call him Walter instead of John, right? So, yeah.
And each of these people has their own specific issue with change.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the thing. Stories are always about change. But if you're talking about the guy on the loading dock, he has an issue with change.
Yeah.
But he's not the main person who has the issue with change. It's who is the person that's going to be most thrown off their game by having to do this. There are people in the top of the organization who are going to be thrown off, but the people who have to implement the computer change, that's like a divorce.
It really is like a divorce.
It's like a bad divorce, and you don't get to keep the kids.
Yeah.
And the other person gets the dog. So has storytelling impacted your bottom line?
Yeah, absolutely. Because without it, the selling doesn't work. Like, people don't trust you if you can't tell a story about clients you've helped, change you've made, standards you've written, what the processes were like. In fact, here's a good one. Somebody has said, oh, well, we need to we need this modeling standard. And I said, great, would you like me to share my experiences of the 5 different, standards committees I'm on, and my, the 5 different standards I've written? Like, I'll share you those experiences and stories, and I can walk you through how painful it is to write these things if you've never done it before. And I can break it down to a bottom line. You're going to spend, there are 3 people in a room for 6 months banging their head against the wall trying to write this stuff, where you could just bring me in. I'll grab my template. I'll get it 80% done for you on the first day. And then we'll just tweak it. And I've got a process for tweaking it. It's a methodical, yes, tedious process, but it's successful, and we'll get it done.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that makes a sale.
Right.
People want to change. They just know that it's going to be painful, and they need something and someone to make it seem like not changing is more painful than changing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is it's fun to reconnect with you and just see what you've done with it and where you're going with it, and how it's making a difference in a very technical environment, and how it softens a presentation around technical stuff. It helps to summarize it,
Yeah.
contextualize it,
Humanize
help people
it.
to be able to go, oh, I get that. I understand why that's important.
Yeah.
Let's talk about dates. Let's get out our calendars and talk about dates, and go
Right.
ahead and send me a proposal.
Right.
And to me, that's the world that I live in. It's like storytelling that creates predictable results. And those predictable results are monetizable.
Yes.
It's not just about a story. It's like, it's the right story that makes the right point for the right situation.
Right.
So it's great reconnecting with you again. What recommendation would you have for other techies and nerds out there in terms of, if you're not telling stories, you really need to get on board?
I think it's really challenging for techies to think that they're creative. Some, right, have creative outlets. They're musicians or some other kind of artist or something like that. But I think that actually most engineers I know are actually quite creative. They've just been told they aren't. So it would be really good if they would just accept the fact that they are creative. Then they can kind of dive into this super fun creative process. And the thing for me, I think that was so compelling about your instruction, Doug, is the structure. 9 steps, to which everybody forgets 7, 8, and 9. Literally. And I'm the worst at it, but I'm like, 7, 8, and 9. Every time.
Stick the landing. You got to stick the landing.
Stick the landing every single time. Every time I'm like, I only did 80%. They didn't do 7, 8, 9. So, the structure is really compelling because it provides a framework to kind of mess around with the creativity. And I think that's great for techie people because we really need structure, or else our heads kind of explode a bit or a lot, depending. Yeah.
Everybody that comes to me comes away saying it's the 9 steps and the phrase that pays.
Yeah.
Those
definitely.
2 things are absolutely a lifeline for, I want to get there. I don't know how to get there. Throw me a line, throw me some help. The 9 steps. Thank you. Got it. Reel me in with the phrase that pays. Okay. So keep working on those. Keep using the 9 steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep coming up with more, like talk to Walters, because those phrases that pays are fabulous. I really appreciate hearing that from you again and knowing it's working.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to hear you. Good to see you. Good to be with you again.
Likewise.
Take care.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
right, well, that's it for this episode. To learn more about Jennifer Herron and Action Engineering in Golden, Colorado, go to www.action-engineering.com. Now, once again, if you feel that you learned something valuable today, something that you can use that will make you and your business memorable, marketable, and monetizable, there are 3 things I'd like you to do. First, click on the follow or subscribe button. And second, share this podcast with 3 people. Help me spread the word about storytelling that sticks. And if you're following me on LinkedIn, and I hope you are, please post a comment whenever I post a promo for a new episode of Storytelling That Sticks. And third, leave a review wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast. And as always, I'd love to hear from you with your questions and comments. What are you thinking about? What questions do you have about storytelling in business? Let me know that you're out there listening and learning. And if you want help with your stories, speeches, or TED Talks, please get in touch with me at doug@dougstevenson.com. Thanks for listening. Until next episode, I'm Doug Stevenson.